The Mystic Wanderer, a practical guide to mysticism with Stephen Weiss. In the first episode, we talked about the basics of mysticism, the basic concepts and ideas. I mentioned some teachers that I listen to and how that it really does change you and transform you. And this is why I sort of wanted to share this. It's an experience of God that goes beyond thought. And I feel like that's really where we find God, because we don't find God in thought, because words will never encompass all of the divine. It's impossible. But if we let go of words and we experience with our own divine nature, the divine, we have a more complete experience of God. And over the time that I've been practicing this, and this has maybe really been about 5 years. I've been practicing meditation probably for 20, but the true, real mysticism probably for about 5. And these practices that I'm going to share with you are really the ones that I have encountered through my different teachers, and the ones that really work with me, the ones that really speak to me, and I think practically speaking, the most helpful. And I'm going to talk about meditation at the end, because I think it's the longest one. It's also sort of the one I'm worst at. I would say I'm probably a intermediate meditator, because I don't do sits as often or as long as I know I want to, even though in a sense, you'll find that there's not really a specific goal in meditation. There's a paradox of meditation that we'll get into, that sort of having a goal can defeat the purpose of meditation, and yet the incentive for meditation is maybe for life to be better, and there's nothing wrong with that. So it's sort of this paradox that we'll be in, that I'll talk about more. But I'm going to start with a very basic practice that I think that is part of the mystic life, is just cultivating awareness. And in words, I'm just going to say that awareness, cultivating awareness, is where you're able to sort of stop at any moment and take stock of what's going on internally and externally. So you can say, okay, what am I thinking right now? Or what thoughts are occurring, right? If you're able to sort of let go of the I in that sentence. What thoughts are coming by? What feelings do I have? And feelings exist in the body, as I've learned from Shinzen Young, where if you have a feeling, it's somewhere in the body. And so where is that? I feel nervous. Where is the nervousness? Is it in my chest? Is it in my stomach? I feel happiness. Where is that arising? Is it arising from my belly? And things like that. And then, externally, what sights, light, colors, sounds do I see? What feelings do I feel on my skin? What do my muscles feel? What do my limbs feel? And this awareness, this cultivation of awareness, brings you into the moment where you exist, so you don't get pulled into the past or the future and pulled so far into thoughts that you're not really existing right now. You're somewhere else. And we'll see that, being present is another actual practice that I'm talking about. But right now, to do any of these things, I would say you first have to have an awareness where you're able to sort of stop and look at yourself and look at the world and everything and just see what's happening. And if you cultivate that throughout your day, where you practice just stopping, and the easy way to do that is tie it to some reminder. Every time I look at my watch or my phone, or every time I look out the window, I will remember to stop and be aware. The big skill that comes with the awareness is you develop a grounding in reality, in existence, and you get this separation between yourself and your thoughts and your feelings and your senses, that you realize there's sort of an observer. There's a true self that's behind all of this. And the true self is something that you need for all of these other practices. So when you start becoming aware, you realize that you are an observer. And in fact, there's two names I have for the observer that I call the observer. One is the observer, and the other is the dancer. And the dancer is more of the nature that we all have to kind of go along with the moment, where we're not thinking, but we're acting in the moment. So we're being in the moment. So the dancer is sort of the action form of your true self, where you just go with whatever is happening and you don't overthink it or think it at all. You just gloriously move like many animals do when they exist, right? If you think about the beauty of animals living their lives, they're not thinking about what they're doing. They're just doing. And so I recommend that. So that's the dancer, right? And then the observer is sort of the being still part, where you're observing everything that's happening, including your own thoughts and emotions. And so cultivating this awareness of your true self as the observer and the dancer, I think, is really the beginning of all the other practices. So I would start there with a practice of cultivating awareness several times throughout the day. So one important skill, and honestly, this I think is what has helped me more than meditation, because I do it more often, which is processing our emotions. And most of this I did learn from Shinzen Young, and you can look up his videos and teachings on processing emotions and what he calls skill at feeling, where most of our difficulties with emotions really lie in the fact that we resist them. And I think for most people, it's the quote unquote unpleasant emotions that we try to resist. We say, I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be nervous. I don't want to be fearful. For some people, I don't want to be angry. And so we resist those when we have them. Now, this is an important distinction. I'm going to tell you not to resist them, but instead to fully experience the emotion. That doesn't mean that you let it control you, or in fact, that you really take any external action. All of this processing is internal when you deal with these emotions. So to process your emotion, well, the first part of it comes from awareness, which we just talked about, where you've cultivated your awareness enough that you realize when you're in a strong emotional state and you say, oh, look, I'm experiencing strong emotions. And this even works for the good emotions because you will experience them more fully. But it's very useful for anxiety, which, again, I have been a long sufferer of. And of course, the problem with anxiety and fear and other, sadness, depression, emotions like that is that you become afraid of having them, and you can be afraid of being anxious, which is anxious about being anxious, or meta-anxiety, which is a pretty terrible thing. But there's an initial, and I think we basically encourage this pathway in our brain because we've sort of been taught, and I think this is sort of a Western type of thinking, again, that, oh, these emotions are bad. I don't want them. I shouldn't feel them. I should feel bad for feeling. I'm not allowed to be depressed. My life, I should be grateful, right? Oh, I can't be anxious. That's weakness. All those sort of things that can get into our head. And so we have this initial resistance to them. And so we don't feel them. But what happens is, and this is, you know what, I'm going to look this up because I think I'm kind of a sci-fi nerd. So what we want to do, you'll see what I'm talking about in a second, right? What we want to do is fully process our emotion. And the way that we do that is by letting it pass through us completely. And that's what I'm looking for here. I think I've gotten it. The Litany Against Fear from Dune, which sort of encompasses, in a sense, right, what I'm talking about. And it's a little bit grandiose and literary, as it should be, right? But here it is. And this is Frank Herbert's Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Now, again, I said it's a little dramatic. At the beginning, we're kind of, I would say it empowers fear a little bit too much. It's the mind killer. It's the little death, right? I mean, maybe if you're on a planet that, there's a struggle for survival, right? Daily, you might want to be more serious about this. But really, from a mystic's point of view, all of this is a story and a game, and we're in it. And we, in a sense, chose to play this even if we don't remember that. So it's not that serious, but the big thing is if we fully let it process, instead of turning away from the bad feeling, the fear, the anxiety, the sadness, we steer ourselves into it, which, again, that can be scary in itself because we've trained ourselves to not do that, right? But what we're doing is turning into the emotion and allowing it to happen. So we're getting rid of the resistance, because a lot of times as soon as we feel the anger, the fear, the sadness, we go, huh! We tighten up and we fight against it. And what we're doing really is amplifying the experience of that emotion with our resistance, right? And so resistance is amplifying or multiplying the negative emotion experience. But instead, if we turn into it and feel it, and if we originally aren't afraid of it, it's just, oh, this is a feeling, this is an emotion that I experience. And one of the things that helps, of course, is that it will pass, right? You can't feel afraid forever. You can't feel sad forever. Life changes. In one way you can look at it is impermanence from the Buddhist school, right? But we look at this and we allow the feeling. And, some of my teachers, I remember in their books where they, like Cynthia Bourgeault, for instance, would be like, oh, hello, anxiety. Welcome. What brings you here today? And you sit it down and have a cup of tea with it, right? And it takes away the power of it when you treat it like that, when you welcome it instead of resisting it. And so Shinzen Young talks about experiencing it in the body. So as soon as you have that anxiety, fear, sadness, whatever unpleasant, even anger this works with, you go, where is it in the body? So you become the observer and you find it in your body. Oh, there it is. The fear is in my stomach. It's in my chest. Well, what does it feel like? Is it pulsating? Is it clenching? What is happening? And examine and feel it. Okay, let's feel that experience completely. Let's totally give in and let it do what it wants, right? Because as long as you're sitting there, sitting still, what can it do? It just can make you feel. And if we're not afraid of the feeling, if we're not afraid of fear, then we let it run its course. It's kind of like jumping into a raging river and just letting it carry you, and eventually it will run its course and it will carry you to the calm water. And so we let it. We just dive in. And I know this isn't. I described this. I know it's not just easy and you can just do it, but try. Turn into the emotion instead of away from it. Let go of your fear and resistance and be the observer and find it in your body. And let it finish processing as much as you can and have a complete experience of that emotion. And when it is completed, it will pass, just like in the poem, right? And only I will remain. The true self, the observer, will remain. And yet that experience of that emotion will have passed. And not only that, you will have processed it completely so it doesn't hang around in your body and in your mind. And I think this practice has been the most helpful for me because especially if I'm feeling anxiety so often, I'm doing this practice all the time. Now I'm a lot better than I was years ago, but definitely this practice is something that has really helped me. And of course, this is just a short description of it. There's more if you want to go in and find Shinzen's teaching on that. So another thing I'm going to talk about, and it reminds me that last time I didn't mention one of my teachers. One of my favorite teachers is Eckhart Tolle. And he and Ram Dass both have a similar thing they talk about. And Eckhart Tolle's main thing is he calls it the power of now and being present. And, Ram Dass's big recording that he released was Be Here Now, right? So it's not a new concept. It keeps coming up because it's in the eternal consciousness of all, I guess, humanity, or the one consciousness. It's there because it's something that we do. And I actually recently, I'm teaching a high school class. I'm a college instructor in computers, and occasionally we get a high school class that's taking the advanced credit, basically like a college class. And I talk to my students about being happy. And I said, how many times have you eaten your favorite meal, your favorite food in the world, and you were so busy thinking about something else that you didn't even taste it or enjoy it? And then you look, oh, my meal's finished. It's gone. And I didn't even enjoy it. Even though you had it, you weren't present for the experience. And we miss so much of life because we end up in the past and the future, which is kind of strange because in one perspective, and this is one thing I love about paradox and having a both and mentality, where there are many perspectives and many of them are valid and they work, and different ones work for different people. But this perspective, in this case, that we can be present right now, and that really now is everything there is, that there is no past and there is no future. There is only the present moment. And that is a perspective, and that works in many ways. You could see many ways how it works because we are always in the now. And this sort of now, if we think of it as an existing being, a state, we tend to think of states as stable. But this is a now that is flowing like the ocean, like a river. Like, even though it's a single moment, it's a moving moment, which is sort of also a paradox, right? Because we tend to think scientifically as a point in time and everything is still in that point in time. But it's a point in time where everything is moving and in movement, and that's the state that everything is in all the time. But we're in that moment, and really that's all we have. And the problem is, of course, when we think about our past, most of the time what we're thinking about is how we could have done something better or how we wish something hadn't happened. And when we think of the future, we're just worried about what's going to happen. Occasionally, we do think of, oh, this something good's going to happen tomorrow, or we're excited about tomorrow. But even when we're excited about tomorrow, what about right now? Right now is actually the thing. It's the show, it's the reality, and you're missing it because you're thinking about this cool thing that's going to happen tomorrow, and you aren't enjoying your soup or your sandwich or your song that you're listening to right now because you're lost in tomorrow. But really, you're spending the only thing that you really have, which is the present, and trading it for imaginations and thoughts. And it's not wrong, right? No one lives in the present moment all the time. Okay, maybe there's some gurus or some people who are pretty good at that, but the point of one of the things that I think is a big point of mystic teaching is that you exist in multiple states. You exist in the ego sometimes. You need that. It's not evil, right? You exist sometimes thinking of the past and future. There is reason to do that. But it's all about balance. And this is why I love the yin yang, and I think of it all the time, and I even wear a yin yang a lot, where if we could just be present half the time, that would be amazing, right? So being present, and and that also comes from the awareness, right? Where we are aware, we become aware, our first practice of how, oh, I'm not being in the moment right now, right? We can see our emotions, our thoughts, they're pulling us this way, they're pulling us that way. And when we're aware, we can say, okay, let's stop and be present. And then just come and slow down our thoughts, or let go of our thoughts, let go of our emotions, let go of all these things, and be in the present. And one thing we'll talk about when we get to meditation is that all of these things, past, future, thoughts, emotions, they have a pull. It's like a force. It feels like a gravitational or a magnetic force that pulls you. And I'm not sure, I think it's Eckhart Tolle. One of my teachers talks about this, and thoughts will arise in your head. And, thoughts, we don't even really understand where thoughts come from. They just show up. But thoughts will arise in your head and they will say like, think me. And then you will voluntarily grab onto them. They will pull you and you'll continue. And then you know where those thoughts came from. They came from that first thought, and you keep thinking about it and adding to it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And that's where you go with that. And that takes you out of the present, right? And emotions do the same thing. Feel me. And the problem is we don't completely feel them. We don't fully experience them and dive into them. And we kind of think about them. Oh, there's this feeling again. And then have all the thoughts. Oh, this feeling means this. And then I'll be sad forever. And I'm always going to be in trouble and have bad luck. And so we think about our feelings instead of feeling our feelings, which is also getting us stuck. So if we learn to be present, we can let go, and when we're present, and it's like a mini meditation almost, where we'll feel the pull of all these things. We'll feel the pull of thoughts and emotions, or things in the room, or sounds pulling us to go get involved in them. But if we can just experience them and let them go, oh, that was a sound, okay. There's a thought, okay. And just keep being in the moment instead of getting pulled out of the moment. That's being present. And what that does for you is makes everything more real. And I think this practice of being present is what's giving me these great moments of peace and joy in the simple things, in just works of art, or simple things like I can't even think of it, a plate, or a leaf that I'm looking at, and it all of a sudden it becomes incredibly beautiful. And it's not a manufactured presence. It's not a manufactured event. I didn't build up to it. I didn't spend months building up to this. I just get it because I'm present and I get to see these things. So I think being present is pretty amazing, and a definite skill of being a mystic. And we talk about contemplation, which is sort of a way of focusing, so building our focus skills on a specific thing, where, it could be something simple like a poem. It could be an object, where we seek to fully understand something in a, what I would call the apophatic way, or in its true being, right? You can contemplate a tree, and you're not having thoughts about the tree. You're experiencing the tree. You're standing, you're looking at the tree. You're feeling the force of the tree, the isness of that tree. And you're focusing your attention on that one thing that you're contemplating. And of course, just like in meditation, you will get distracted. Your mind will wander. You might go other places. But what you do is just gently bring back your focus to the contemplation and have a full experience of a poem. Have a full experience of a passage from the Tao Te Ching, or from the Bible, or have a full experience of, like I said, a tree or a flower, or a full experience of your breath, or anything like that. So that's a contemplation, which is similar to meditation, but I feel like it's a different skill, where you can sort of continually contemplate by just focusing on what's happening in your day and focusing on the things that come up in front of you. But of course, you can't live in the state of contemplation all the time. If you want to go to work and do things, you can kind of go in and out of it. But, like I said, we need ego, and we need our experience of being dual thinkers and separating things and putting things in boxes sometimes, which is sort of, again, the kind of yin-yang experience. But we also, if we are able to let go of the ego and let go of labeling and be non-dual and see everything as one, that's the mystic experience, and that's a balance of that. And I want to go into something that, before we get into the meditation part, years ago I was reading a book, and I had walked into a bookstore, and things like this happen to me from time to time, and I'm very grateful for them. I felt like God was highlighting this certain book, and it's kind of an obscure book. And I was in a used bookstore, and it just kind of stood out to me, like, get this book. And I wasn't even sure what it was. From a distance, I could see it, the cover, and I walked over, and it was an interesting book called God is My Success, which sounds very capitalistic, but it's sort of the opposite of that. It's like, no, your material successes and all that isn't your success. It's God, themselves. Your experience of God is actually what is what you were sort of made to have. And so, but in there was a checklist, and it talked about balance, and it was saying, here's a list of, take this survey and see what you get. And it was doing versus being. And I literally selected doing for all of the answers. There was no being in my life. I was a doer. And of course, it's not about, only doing being, unless you want to go retreat in the mountains and be a hermit for a few years, which, I don't know, do it if you feel like it. But for me, it was a big shocking revelation that there was no being. There was no stillness in me. I felt like I always had to be doing something, accomplishing something, building up accomplishments and successes to be fulfilled. And so for me, and some people are like this, right? Because I was so much of a doer, I could turn myself as much as I possibly could into being, and then I might end up at the halfway mark where I'm balanced, because I'm naturally going to just do all the time. So my challenge is the being, which is why I'm probably only so far as I am with my meditation practice. But once I realized that there's a balance between doing and being, that I really did sort of turn myself and even throw myself into being. And of course, you'll hear perhaps, the sort of Western capitalistic, and I'm not saying capitalism is evil. I'm just saying it's out of balance. And you might hear the voices of these type of people saying, "Oh, you're just being lazy. You're not being productive." And there's a beauty to being and sitting and enjoying trees, because one day you will be dead. And if you just focused on being productive all that time, you will have missed the flowers and the trees and the music and the whatever you love, that you've put aside. So with that, I want to go into meditation, and there's a few things I want to tell you. Again, I would say I'm an intermediate. I've gotten to a good level in a lot of different types of meditation. I'm still kind of waiting for the next level to get really deep into it. But all of these practices, I think, together form a very good combination for me. So a lot of people I talk to about meditation, they say, "Oh, I can't meditate. I can't do it because I have all these thoughts and they just won't stop, and I sit and it's just terrible, and I want to get up and I can't do it. So I can never meditate." But what they don't understand is it's not a skill you just are good at instantly, right? I mean, I hate to use the analogy, but it's like riding a bicycle. It takes a while for you to balance on that bicycle and not fall. It just takes a while. So you gotta, you don't have to do anything, right? But if you want to meditate, realize that you can, first of all, that it takes practice. You can just sit, and all you have to do really to start is say, all right, I'm going to set aside 15 or 20 minutes to meditate. And it doesn't even have to be every single day. I'd say maybe 4 or 5 days a week. I'm sort of saying that's the minimum, because there are scientific studies and effects that show benefits of meditation. So if you're wanting to get the benefits, I would say 4 or 5 times a week, at least 15 minutes. And accept that whatever happens during that 15 to 20 minutes is okay. People get angry and frustrated. It's not working. I'm not doing the thing, right? Well, there isn't a specific thing to do. You sit and you make yourself still. And you don't judge yourself. I think that's the hardest thing, is people get mad at themselves because, I can't do it. But you can once you practice. It just takes a while. So you have to have a level of commitment and discipline, but an understanding that changes will happen, and you will learn. And you might not be a fast learner at it. You might be a fast learner, but you accept that you're going to sit and be quiet for 15 to 20 minutes. That's the agreement. 4 to 5 times a week, 15, 20 minutes is the agreement to sit and be still. And whatever happens during that time in your brain, don't judge it. Okay? And there's different postures and ways to sit you can read about. I'm all about being comfortable. Probably don't lay down though, because it will tend to make you sleep, especially in our sleep deprived civilization that we live in today. But I sit in different ways that are comfortable, and I meditate. And so accept whatever happens. It's just part of the practice. Because I don't know, people I think that, once you get really good at it, you just sit there and your mind is completely empty and there's no thoughts. No, I don't think that ever goes away. What happens is you'll have longer and longer periods of pauses where you're not thinking. And those pauses are just blissful. And sometimes it feels so good that you have a thought, this is great, and you ruin it because you are so happy about the pause in your thoughts that you think about how happy you are, which is fine, right? You accept that. Okay, I had a thought, and then you go back. But really it's sort of like meditation is something you kind of do with no goal, right? If you come in, especially this Western, accomplishments mentality of accomplishing something by meditating, it sort of does ruin it. But you can kind of keep in the back of your head, kind of hiding from your consciousness, I am doing this to make things better. But also the kind of real goal is to do it because you want to do it, or just to do it, to practice being. Now there's many types of meditation. What I recommend for most beginners is to find a guided meditation. And so you can search and find a guided 15 or 20 minute meditation online. And that is usually helpful because then it gives people something to focus on rather than just trying to, sit. Okay. So guided meditation, but you're not really just trying to sit. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so the guided meditation is someone, basically they'll speak and then they'll be quiet for a while, and then they'll give you just minor instructions or bring you back to focus, right? Which is nice. So you can try that, and you maybe find someone whose voice you like, someone whose method that you like, whose style you like. There's a lot of different types. There's not really any type of meditation I know about that I think is bad or wrong or, recommend against. It's sort of whatever works for you that gets you in a state where you're not thinking about things, and especially your mind isn't running around wildly like it is most of the time, just thinking whatever it wants to, right? So guided meditation. My preferred one is probably one of the harder ones, but I really love it. And it's really something I mentioned before. It's Vipassana, and very similar to something called centering prayer, which has been brought back by the Christian mystics and Thomas Keating in particular, where you sit and, take a moment to relax and breathe, and then you observe your thoughts. You literally become the observer, like I mentioned. And you don't judge the thought. You see that it's there. There's a thought, and then you let it go. And some people use sort of an image to help, like the thought's a little paper boat on a stream, and there it goes, or just it floats away into the distance or something like that. And then you just wait for the next thought or the next feeling or the next sound. You're just observing everything, reality. And you observe the thought and you take a note of it. That was this. And then you go back to the center. And of course, some of these thoughts, feelings, images will have a stronger pull, and they will pull you into thoughts. It's inevitable. And so you'll go off onto thoughts for a while, and then because you're cultivating your awareness, you'll be like, look, I have been pulled away into thoughts. All right, let's go back to the center. Now for Vipassana, you just go back to being the observer. In centering prayer, you have a word. You have a word that you've chosen to center yourself, some kind of divine word that you've chosen that you're going to always use in this meditation. And you say that word internally, externally, it doesn't matter. You say the word and bring yourself back to center that way. So those are, that's my favorite meditation. It's more difficult. And when I can't do that, I'll do one of my easier ones. One of the easier ones for me is the just breath focused meditation. So it's sort of kind of like a deep contemplation where you get yourself relaxed and you breathe and you feel your breathing and you focus all your attention on the breath, where you feel it coming into your nose, you feel your lungs filling up, you sort of become the process of breathing. There's nothing else but the breathing, and you focus on that. And you really relax, and you'll probably notice that your breathing will become slower and more peaceful as you go on. And the same thing will happen. Thoughts will arise, and some will have a strong pull and pull you away. And then with your awareness, you find the awareness of what's happening. Oh, there it is. I'm thinking. All right. Go back to the breath. Bring the focus back to the breath. And any of these meditations, right, don't get angry, frustrated, give up because you're not. Just sit. Commit to sitting. Whatever happens, happens. Some people eventually experience strong emotions that will come up because maybe you haven't processed them. But once you've got your skill at feeling and processing emotions, you'll have that to do while you're meditating as well. So it's really a combination of all these sort of things that work together. So another type of meditation you can do besides focusing on breath is you can focus on something else. You can have an image in your mind of a flower or, a mountain or anything, and just focus on that image and see the image and let it be there. And you're not thinking about it, right? You're just letting the image be in your mind and your spirit. One that I particularly like, and it's used by a lot of people in a lot of ways, is sort of a body scan meditation. And this really helps for relaxation. And what happens is when you do it, you sit and you start, and usually you start at the head. I don't know why, but start at your face and you just relax your face. And you feel all your face muscles and your cheeks and your jaw and your eyes and your forehead, and just relax all of those. And you feel, and Shinzen Young taught me this one, where you feel how good it feels to relax all those muscles, and you enjoy the pleasure of that. And so I believe he calls it the relaxation pleasure meditation. And so you just start at your face and your head and go down through your neck and all the way down to your feet. And this is a very relaxing. This was sort of my cheat meditation. Like when I couldn't do any other type of meditation, I did this one because it would work. And he actually has a guided one of that on his Science of Enlightenment audio series that he did. And I would use that when nothing else would work, because that would work for me. So I really like that one. There's a similar type of body scan meditation called Yoga Nidra, which is really interesting, where it is a visualization exercise that, while you're visualizing, also walks you through a body scan. And it's very powerful. A lot of people recommend doing that before sleeping, that it's a really good one for that. Other type of meditation you can do is, some people find they can do it better in a group. You sign up for meditation sessions with a group, and there is a different dynamic or feeling when you're in a group. It does give you more discipline, right? You're not going to just be sitting in this group of 50 people or 20 people or a dozen people and just get up and be like, oh, I can't do this, right? You're not going to do that because you're there with all these other people, right? So you will resist that because you don't want to obviously interrupt their meditation. But also there's almost a group feeling or a consciousness you can experience of having all the other people around you meditating. There is a very peaceful kind of experience you get of that. So for some people, that's good. And it's good because if it's a regular time, a regular place, you can make it into a habit and a commitment, and that gets you meditating more. So the result of the meditation, right, is, they've done studies. It actually does change your brain. So that's good in a positive way. But for me, the big thing, and it kind of links with a lot of the other practices, but it gives you it reinforces your observer true self, where this observer is able to separate the true self, your existence, from your thoughts and your emotions. the more you sit and observe them and watch them arise from seemingly nowhere, right? Where do they come from? And I think this is something like the Buddhist masters are able to sort of turn their internal eye 180 degrees and see the source, right, of that, which is, very advanced, right? But you do get, as the observer, you realize this real self that you are that's separate from thoughts and emotions, and it gives you this sort of layer of protection and strength where you don't necessarily get drawn in and captured so much by your thoughts and emotions. And I think this also gives you a resilience in life, where you are able to find more inner strength from cultivating this observer. And one of the things that I've noticed, and it's something I got very early on from my meditation, honestly, when I started about 20 years ago, is that I can bring to memory the blissful state from meditation, once I've experienced it enough times. Usually what happens for me is it takes 5 minutes to get my brain to really calm down in a session. And then after 10 or 15, it gets really peaceful and calm. And I feel this very, almost exuberant state, almost I'm not thinking, isn't it great? Trying not to think that, but feeling that state of blissful calm and peace and just being. But once you've experienced it enough times, you sort of remember it. And you're like, oh, I remember this. And you can bring it back to your body and your mind very quickly. So you're in a situation, you're just going through your day, and you notice you're a little bit tense. And then you can say, oh, let's take a breath and remember that state. And it brings you back to sort of maybe a mini version of that deep meditation state. But you've been in it so many times, you can sort of go back there. You kind of wired it into your being now. And that is a very useful tool. So when you have the awareness, when you are feeling uncomfortable or tense or anything, that you can say, oh, let's take a moment and go back to that peaceful state. And it's a very good, I would say, tool to have. And again, I've sort of tied that to a reminder where, if I look at my phone right now, my phone has a picture of someone meditating. So whenever I look at my phone, I'm reminded, oh, let's take a moment and take a breath and center and go back to that peaceful state. And so that's really a benefit that I've gotten from meditation. So that's the practices that I wanted to share with you today. So it all starts with cultivating your awareness of your true self and your observer mind and your dancer, and that you're separate from all of these things, but you are experiencing them. And then we get to, processing your emotions, feeling your emotions, fully experiencing your emotions, being present in the present moment, contemplating, developing a focus for your consciousness, right? Which is a very useful skill. Understanding that being is as important as doing. And then, of course, the different meditation practices. So I encourage you to go check different ones out, talk to people who meditate. That's probably the best way. And try some guided meditation, maybe try some group meditation, whatever it is. Find the meditation that works for you and don't get frustrated like it's so easy, right? But really don't, just choose to, from the beginning, that you're not going to just get angry, frustrated, and beat yourself up for, I'm not doing it. Just accept that this is how it is. And even for more advanced people, we spend a good few minutes at the beginning of every session going through the crazy thought, settling the mind down phase, and it's all over the place, and thoughts keep throwing at you, and you eventually get past them if you are patient enough. So kind of build that into it. And even if you don't for the whole 20 minutes, realize that eventually you will get better at it. So that's my thoughts for the Mystic Wanderer today. And we'll talk to you all next time. The Mystic Wanderer